Hello, my name is Daniel, and this is the Engineering Success Podcast, episode 53. How are you guys doing? This is our second to last episode before the holidays, second to last episode of 2023. We have a really cool interview this week. I hope you guys enjoy it. Before we get into that, let's give a shout out to our top tier supporters. Thank you so much to Leroy Jenkins and John Ott for being top tier supporters of the podcast and for helping me keep this thing afloat. If you want to be a top tier supporter yourself, it's $10 a month. You can support me by clicking on either the Patreon or the Spotify for podcasters support links in the description box of your audio or video platform that you're watching on, and that helps me keep my email and my website alive. My website is www.engringsuccess.com, and you can email me at daniel@engringsuccess.com if you have a question, you'd like to be featured on the podcast, if you're interested in being a guest, or if you're interested in supporting the podcast for a sponsorship inquiry, shoot me a note at Daniel. Anyways, this is going to be a great episode. I hope you guys enjoy the interview, and I'll catch you on the other side. Hello, my name is Daniel, and we are here for episode 53 of the Engineering Success Podcast, and I'm here with our guest, Mikaela McDonald. My guest on today's podcast is somebody who I have admired for a long time, as whenever I was a young student struggling in weeder courses like Calc 3 and Physics 1 and Physics 2 and engineering school at Trinity University, this guest of mine was taking courses about concepts I couldn't even imagine myself comprehending and talking about her internship experience with a cool company whose products were impacting my everyday life. Now, Mikaela McDonald is a Cisco Infrastructure Solutions Executive at SHI International Corporation, a leader in the IT solutions and services industry, and interestingly, is also classified as the largest minority woman owned business enterprise in the United States. Isn't that cool? She has had a wonderful career journey that we're going to talk about today that, you guessed it, started at Cisco. But before that, she was a student at Trinity University with me, which, like me, she's also a graduate of their Bachelor's of Science in Engineering Science program. Go Tigers! Mikaela's career journey has spanned across multiple companies, states, and time zones, and I'm so glad that she's here today to share her story. Her passion is to encourage other engineers that it is okay to pivot and try new things, as that process of learning and changing the way you think allows you to make better decisions, as long as each time you pivot, you maintain goals and adjust accordingly. To her, relationships are everything and should be treated with intentionality. And in that vein, I am so grateful for our relationships and that she has blessed me with her time to share more on these topics in today's interview. Thank you so much, Mikaela. How are you doing today?
I'm great, Daniel. How are you doing?
Oh, I am absolutely blessed. I think I'm the least sick person in my household right now, so I have to count my blessings there.
Yeah, I love it. Well, thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for having me too. What'd you do today?
Not anything too exciting. Just, woke up and took my dog to the dog park before work and then hopped on some calls, talked about some Cisco gear. That's about it. And now I'm talking with you.
It's awesome. Well, one of the first questions I always like to ask my guests is, well, you're an engineer. So, how did you realize that you wanted to study engineering? And when did you make that decision in your life?
Yeah, so that's just kind of a funny question because I think at least anyone who was close with me at Trinity in college, they knew I wasn't really the most passionate or excited about engineering. Um,
What?
yeah, I think that was kind of like a well-known thing, but I chose to go into it. So as high school senior, just kind of trying to think about what degree I would want to do, and then chose engineering straight off the bat freshman year, mainly just because it was kind of like a very logical degree to choose. You kind of know in general, like, okay, like engineers usually have a pretty good shot at getting a good job after college. It's a pretty financially stable degree path. And that's kind of ultimately why I chose. And even my parents had kind of talked to me too, where they're just kind of like, hey, look, like most engineers in the world are males. It's a pretty male dominated industry. That's something you could kind of try to use as an advantage, for the fact that a lot of companies, even back then when we were growing up, were kind of talking about this initiative to try to get more women in STEM fields. So yeah, I kind of just really chose it based on logic rather than an actual interest.
Yeah. And then obviously you had to be somewhat aptitude for it. You had to have the aptitude for it as well. So were you a pretty good student in high school coming out?
Yeah, I think I was a pretty good student. I think in high school, I probably stressed way too much about grades. I was valedictorian in high school, so I did well on paper in all of my subjects. I wouldn't really say math and science was something I had the highest aptitude for naturally. But I think I at least in high school I do remember enjoying math. So I kind of was like, okay, like I like math enough. There's some of that in engineering. There's a lot of science. Like, see, science seemed kind of interesting. Like
Yeah.
maybe it'll be okay.
Yeah. So you're like, okay, I'm decently smart at math, science, and women have there's good career opportunities for women in engineering, and I think I can do this engineering thing. And then you toured colleges, and then you ended up picking one to go to. I'd say you made a really good choice. Just I'm totally not biased at all.
Yeah,
So, but
totally.
yeah, yeah. But why Trinity? Why Trinity University, and why their engineering science program? No, I've talked to my on my podcast. It's not your traditional engineering program. It's traditional in the sense that it's ABET accredited, but it is a liberal arts school. It's a liberal arts education, but it's engineering. So why Trinity? Why'd you make that choice?
Yeah, so my older brother, who was 2 grades older than me, he actually went to Trinity, did engineering science program.
No way.
Yeah, so that's the honestly kind of the main reason. Like I visited him and I kind of was like, okay, like I could actually see myself going here. And he was someone who chose engineering because he genuinely was interested in engineering
Hmm.
and the coursework and being an engineer. But just talking with him about his project, I was like, oh, that actually sounds kind of cool. Like he'd always be so excited and geek out about the design projects we had to do. And yeah, I kind of was just like, okay, like that seems good. But I think the engineering science, it's a good degree program to choose or a good kind of branch of engineering if maybe you're not 100% certain which path of engineering you want to go down.
Yeah.
Just because you get that exposure to a bunch of different types of engineering, you're able to kind of make an informed decision about, okay, maybe one between chemical, mechanical, and electrical is something I want to go in. So I think that's a pretty good case. I think students who maybe going into college, like they just know with conviction that they're meant to be like a civil engineer. Maybe engineering science might not be the best path
Yeah.
in that case, but I mean, what 18-year-old really knows what they want to do? So, I mean, yeah, I'm very big fan of the engineering science degree program.
Me too. I think it's interesting. It kind of, I don't know if you agree with me, but it kind of attracts like a massive dichotomy in type of engineering student. On the one hand, you have the ones that for sure want to be like a professor, or they want to get their PhD. So they go to Trinity, they get a wonderful education, and then they go to grad school and they become a PhD. And then you have the other dichotomy that is the people like you and me that get an engineering degree because they know that they can do it. They like engineering. It's a great education, great school, and then they're not going to do any design engineering for the rest of their career. Now there are other people that do actual engineering. A lot of my friends that graduated from the program do still do, but it's interesting that how that is kind of two polar opposites. I was texting my buddy Sean Farrell, who's doing his finishing up his PhD at Rice right now, and
Wow.
it's just two complete opposites. His fiance also graduated from the engineering science program, and she went and got her MBA. So it's so funny the two kind of polar opposites that get attracted to the program, but I think that's a good characteristic of it.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the beauty of it. I feel like it's just more and more kind of proves this general theory here where it's just a lot of engineering majors, you're really I mean, sure, yeah, you're learning how to be an engineer and all the specific coursework, but at the end of the day, you're learning really great complex problem solving skills that can apply to any industry or any career path. So that's kind of my experience. And yeah, I think it's cool to see all of our peers and just friends do a lot of different things with the
Yeah.
engineering degree.
Yeah. So for you, was it your brother going to Trinity that kind of made you realize you wanted to go there, or were there other things that you saw about the program that made you like it for yourself that other people maybe should take into account whenever they're looking for an engineering program?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like I chose Trinity more as a school before I chose it over engineering specifically.
Interesting.
Um, yeah, like I kind of knew going into it. It's kind of more like a feeling, like listening to that gut feeling of just being on campus. And I'm like, okay, I actually have a feeling like this is where I'm supposed to be. Because what's funny is I was already committed to going to College of William and Mary, and had already like literally already sent the deposit, was like locked and loaded to
Wow.
going there. And then I visited my brother, and then I was just like, oh no, I made a terrible mistake. Like, what have
Yeah.
I done? And I just had a feeling I was supposed to go there, and kind of listen to that gut feeling. And I feel like it worked out. But yeah, no, I mean, I kind of knew choosing Trinity that, this engineering science program was a good program. And I think just the fact that my older brother was doing the program, I think was a big selling point for me. I don't know if I would have done engineering. I mean, who's to say? But like, I don't know if I for sure would have done it if I didn't have my older brother who went to Trinity and did engineering science.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and we're both very fortunate to have gotten to attend such an awesome private university. I think that a lot of people get the there's a group of people that give the advice that says, well, if you want to do engineering, go to your state school, cheapest state school that you can go to, and just get your engineering degree and go out. But I'll tell you that I mean my experience going to Trinity, I think it was really worth it, and I was blessed to be able to. It was basically about the same to go there versus my state school. So it's just like you. I'm very grateful to have gotten the chance to go there. So you mentioned that you were a really good student in high school. I think you mentioned you're
Yeah.
valedictorian. Nice humble brag there, by the way.
Yeah.
So what kind of what you said you weren't the most interested in engineering in college, but what kind of student were you? Did that transfer, or was it what kind of did those habits that you had in high school impact the way that you were as a college student? What happened?
Yeah, so I'm kind of laughing as you ask that because I feel like I'm someone who tends to live in extremes. I think balance is something I've always struggled with.
Mhm.
And my kind of takeaways from high school, I remember just like graduating high school and being so freaking burned out. Just being like,
Really?
I worked so hard to, meet these goals that I had for myself.
Mhm.
And then I'm like, dang, now I only have 3 months off and I have to just work really hard all over again. And I'm like, dang, I probably could have gotten into Trinity without having like perfect grades.
Yeah.
And so I kind of went into college with the mindset that, okay, as long as I do well, and I was like, I just, doing well is important to me, but I don't need to stress so much about every single grade. I just kind of, realized I'm like, okay, I probably could get to where I want to go without having to stress so much. And so my mindset was just to try to enjoy life a little more.
Mhm.
Maybe I went too far in the other direction. I don't know. I mean, I still graduated with a 3.3, so I was probably like a B plus student.
That's
Nothing
good.
nothing special. Could have definitely done worse. But man, I feel bad for our professors. I was just
Mhm.
someone who, like, if there was an extension to ask for, or if
You
there
got
was
it.
just anything, yeah, if there was just any sort of like thing I could try to do to like get around turning anything in on time, I would. I remember running into Maboob at alumni weekend a couple years ago, and this was before he retired, and he just was like, so Mikaela, like, what are you doing with your life now? He's like, you're not an engineer, are you? And I was like, Well, I kind of am. Like I went into sales engineering and he was like, "Oh, sales, that's perfect for you. You were always full of shit." And
That's
I
the
think
perfect Maboob quote. Yeah, that's awesome.
yeah, yeah. I'm like, okay, the fact that one of my college professors actually said that to me, I think that just kind of goes to show what kind of student I was. Like I did fine, but I was always turning stuff in late and just asking for extensions on like anything that I could ask for extensions on. Maybe not the most proud of that I procrastinated a lot and just did not manage my time well. But at the end of the day, I guess it all worked out for me. So
Hey,
yeah, I
I,
can't stop.
I'd argue that skill is a great skill. I mean, as somebody that does sales and proposals and bidding on work all the time, the skill that our BD and our sales folks have to leverage the most is asking for extensions. That is the most commonly communicated thing to our clients. So maybe you're just preparing for your life as a saleswoman, you know?
Yeah, just, trying to sharpen that skill set for just being full of shit and just kind of trying to yeah, use some soft skills to get what you need sometimes.
Yeah. Exactly. So you practiced asking for extensions. That was a very good applicable use of your degree. You got that in there, and then now you use it all the time, and you use it all the time in sales. What about classes? What college class did you take that is you find most applicable? I'm thinking about this, and you know what? m- I'm very curious to see what your answer is because you went into sales engineering, Cisco, a little electronics in there, but you mentioned Maboob, and he didn't teach any electronics related class. I'm anxiously anticipating your answer for this one.
Yeah, so what's funny is whenever we're in our upper levels of college where you have to kind of choose a specialization
Mhm.
and you're in terms of like the bylaws of the degree program to actually get that degree, you have to take X amount of classes in a specialty. I think I took like electronics too, and that was like the only specialization I took. I read through the whole bylaws and saw that there was a little bit of gray area in there about the number of specialty classes. I saw that you technically didn't have to use those blocks for engineering specialty classes to get your degree. So
Oh,
I actually ended up minoring in economics instead, and I took like 6 upper level econ classes instead of taking engineering classes.
what?
So yeah, yeah. So I took, like intermediate micro, intermediate macro. Econometrics was like the most mind blowing, fascinating class
Yeah.
I've ever taken in my life because it's like this perfect intersection of advanced economic theory plus calculus plus statistics.
Yep.
And that was just like my all time favorite class that I took. Shout out Dr. Houston. He was just my favorite professor at Trinity, just because was just so in love with the subject matter for that class. But,
Do you know why I'm
you
cheesing so
know,
hard right now? I didn't know that
why?
you minored in because I also minored in economics at
Oh
Trinity.
my God, I didn't
And I
know
also
that.
took econometrics with Dr. Houston. And my favorite class from college is also an economics class.
Yes,
My
it's
favorite is
great.
environmental economics with Dr. Shanna McDermott, but she wasn't
Oh,
around, I
nice.
don't think, whenever you got to Trinity. Wow. Okay, so carry on. So your favorite class was econometrics?
Yeah, that was my favorite class. It's just kind of just something like I was just obsessed with. I even for a brief period of time like thought about going to grad school for economics after
Wow.
college, but then I also kind of was like, man, I just don't think I could ever do school ever again. And I'm just like, oh, I don't want to go into even more student loan debt. And then I even just like using basic economic theory, I'm just like, oh, the opportunity cost of thinking about, the income I could be making with an engineering job versus going into more debt
Yeah.
for econ in grad school. And then I kind of ultimately decided from a logical standpoint, I was like, okay, no, it doesn't make sense. But I guess in terms of actual engineering classes that I think apply the most to my life, I mean, technically none of the subject matter I would say directly correlated to what I did at Cisco, because
Mhm.
everything with systems engineering, I mean, you're talking about route, switch, wireless, data centers, cybersecurity, collaboration technologies like voice over IP, and looking at, how can we get traffic from point A to point B in the most effective manner. So, solving that with different routing protocols, and talking about kind of the ins and outs of packet encapsulation and de-encapsulation. So all those concepts with systems engineering in the IT world technically just had nothing to do with what we learned at Trinity. But I think overall, though, especially in the design classes, I think just those kind of non or just like intangible skills that you learn in those design classes really correlate to any branch of engineering. You're learning
Nice.
how to work in a team. You're learning, okay, I'm working in a team, but I'm working with a bunch of different people. We all think about things differently. At the end of the day, this is about us all coming together to achieve a common goal.
Mhm.
And, how can we just keep that end goal in mind? And so I think the design classes were my favorite classes just because I love that kind of social interaction of being able to work in a group and
Yeah.
come together to achieve a common goal. So I think those classes really applied the most to my life. And I think they really, yeah, just are great classes where you learn a lot of great skills that can apply to any job or any role that you do.
It's great. Yeah, I love the design sequence at Trinity. I love taking a design class every single semester, and I really enjoyed that team dynamic of working with other people. How so? I mean, one of the questions that people ask, and I have some people in my audiences that are girls that are considering engineering, and they hear that engineering is male dominated and that there's sexism that's experienced in engineering, and I'm sure that's true what in some places. What was your experience at Trinity, working in teams and as just being a woman in engineering?
Yeah, so I'm fortunate that I never had any negative interactions. I'm know that any sort of negative things like sexism or dealing with things like that sure that's widespread in certain areas of the world, but I'm just fortunate that I myself didn't experience anything like that. I felt like I was treated fairly from my male peers, and we had mostly male professors at Trinity. um, I tried to think of it more as, okay, it's like I can think about choosing this male dominated career path. And sure, I know that there's not many women, and I could see that as an obstacle or maybe even as a reason to shy away from choosing this path. But I instead try to see it more as an opportunity. So I mean, I don't know a single major company today that doesn't have DEI initiatives, where they're specifically focused on trying to hire more women in STEM fields. I think every major tech company is talking about it. A lot of different engineering firms talk about it. And I try to just shift the mindset of seeing like, okay, this is an opportunity that if I just do my part to get the experience and make sure I'm qualified, then the world is my oyster, essentially. I have, yeah, basically, I think of it as you have 100% job security. So I would really, yeah, for any young women out there that might be considering engineering as a path, I mean, I say, hey, go for it. I mean, it never is a bad thing to have an engineering degree, and you will have tons of opportunities, more so than male counterparts. As long as you just do your part and get the qualifications, then you have great job security, and it's a great degree to get.
Yeah, I agree. It's a great degree to get, and I'm glad that companies are doing a better job at trying to have more diverse workplaces. I feel like the more diverse a team that you work on, the better the work product. So I'm glad that they do that. And if you have to work hard to get more people in to make sure that your teams are more diverse, then more power to those companies. And yeah, I'm glad I work for companies that do that. So So
Yeah, for sure.
whenever so you're talking about work, your first job, first internship, very exciting. This is around the time whenever I
Yeah.
met you, as you're talking about. I think I met you as you had came back from this internship. I was like, wow, somebody got an internship at Cisco. That's super cool. So, anyways,
Yeah.
you got to intern with Cisco as a field sales engineering intern. How'd you find that opportunity?
Yeah, so I found it my fall semester of junior year. I was studying abroad in Auckland, New Zealand,
What?
and yeah, it was awesome. But I remember being there and talking to my brother who had just recently graduated, and he was kind of telling me even in September of my junior year, like, "Hey, Michaela, if you're trying to get a summer internship for next summer, like you need to start looking now." Like, he's like, a lot of people think like, oh, that's almost a year away. Like, we just got into the new school year, summer just ended. I got plenty of time. And the truth of the matter is, you do not have plenty of time.
Yes, that's
Um,
correct.
Especially if you want an internship at like a good company, or you want an internship at, yeah, Fortune 100 company, like you need to be looking like almost a year in advance. So yeah, I'm fortunate that I had my older brother to kind of just push me to be like, hey, you need to start looking. So like I applied to a ton of different internships, found out that I had an interview at Cisco in December of that fall semester, of junior year. And yeah, I mean, the main reason I feel like I didn't intentionally see like, oh, field sales engineering internship, let me apply for that. It kind of more is like, okay, I'm gonna apply to like any like good company. And then I kind of saw like, oh wait, sales engineering, like what's this? And then I did more research and I was like, oh, this actually sounds perfect. Um, and the main aspect is just having sales in there. I'm kind of like, okay, sales, like you're dealing with people. And I was a pretty social person in college, I would say. So I kind of was like, okay, like sales, like sweet, like let's do it. So once I kind of got an internship there, yeah, I mean, I was excited about that path because I was like, okay, this seems like the most fun path that I could go into and still be an engineer, but it seems like it'll be more fun just because of the sales aspect and being able to work with people and talk to people and that sort of thing.
Yeah. So wait, so are you telling me that you just like went online, you looked up companies and jobs, you went type, 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 you found Cisco, you applied online, you didn't have an in, you just applied cold, then you got an interview, and then you got an internship. Is that a correct assessment of the overall flow of you getting in with Cisco?
Yeah, yeah. So when I was trying to figure out where I wanted to apply, I was like, okay, I want a good job. So this concept of like getting a good job after college was important to me. Like I had this bookmark that I got at a career fair in college, and it literally says, "Do you want to be in college to get a good job?" And I remember saw it and I was like, oh, like this is this is why I'm in college. Like I want a good job. And so like
Oh,
I use that as like a goal to like keep in mind.
yeah.
And I like just pinned it like on my wall in my dorm room above my desk so that during any all-nighters or any times where I was miserable and I just feel like, God, I just want to quit engineering, or like one time I just like filled out an entire transfer application because I was like, I'm sick of this shit. Like I've had enough. And I would just look up and just see that bookmark and I'm just like, oh no, this is the goal I'm working towards. Like I have to tough it out. So I think it's just this concept of having a goal to work towards. If you're just super focused on achieving a goal, you at least know what direction you're going in. So I think that was something that kind of carried me through college. But in terms of just companies to apply to, I just looked literally at Fortune's list of top 100 companies. So I just looked through the whole Fortune 100 list
Oh,
and then searched them in LinkedIn for job postings. And literally it's kind of like, okay, anything that's like hiring engineering interns. And then I applied to like every single company on the Fortune 100 list that was hiring for engineers, for summer internships the following summer.
wow. And one thing that you did do that I think is something that not everybody does is that you applied to them everywhere. It sounds like you didn't care about what location it was because you're in Houston. You're from Houston. You went to
Yeah.
college in San Antonio, And then your internship opportunity was in San Jose, California. So
Oh God,
so
yeah.
was that scary? Was it, I mean, how'd you, what was it like whenever you pulled the trigger and you're like, yes, I'm gonna go live in California for a summer? And why did you apply that? It sounds like you
Yes.
went
Yeah,
everywhere.
yeah. Yeah, so I mean, the main thing I guess for me is like location didn't matter. It was more like, okay, I need to get a good internship at a like a good company. It was like this idea of like getting a good internship was kind of the utmost importance. So I'm like,
Yeah.
send me to freaking New York City, send me to Houston, send me to San Jose, send me to freaking whatever country you want to send me within reason, of course. I kind of was just open to anything. And I think that's the biggest piece of advice I would say to anyone who's like specifically trying to look for internships. Like, don't limit yourself to one industry or one company or one city. You should just try to see that there's tons of opportunities out there. And then, once you get some offers, then sure, you can think about like, okay, maybe this internship's in California and this one's in, San Antonio. Okay, which then from there, you can think more granularly about what you want. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think for me, it was just kind of fortunate that it was a straightforward process of me just applying to everything. And then I heard back from Cisco, did like 3 rounds of interviews, and then got a job. I think part of that too is being a female engineer, and I knew they were trying to hire for more women. So, I mean, obviously, I was qualified, and I feel like I did well in my interviews. But being a female, I know didn't hurt me.
Yeah. Hey,
Um,
I don't blame you at all. That's a good thing to think about. And obviously, they liked you, right? They after you graduated, you took a return offer. They gave you a return offer,
I did.
and where'd you go for your? You went into a sales associate program called as an associate systems engineer. Where'd you do that? Was that in California as well, or was that in
Yeah,
Texas?
in California.
Oh
So I
wow,
spent, yeah, so I interned in San Jose, California. Liked it okay. I mean, that's where Cisco's headquarters was.
okay,
And
great.
you're kind of, in the Silicon Valley world, and that was kind of cool. And so I'm kind of like, okay, cool. Like I went into my senior year at Trinity already having a full-time job offer lined up at Cisco. So that was awesome. I mean, the internship was definitely a lot of work, and you go through like a super brutal interview process.
Mhm.
And but yeah, I mean, just the fact that you're able to kind of have that huge pressure just lifted going into senior year, where it's kind of like, okay, cool, I just get to kind of coast. And I continued interning with Cisco remotely throughout my senior year at Trinity.
Wow, really?
And
That's cool.
yeah, and so it was busy at times, but it was good just to make a little bit of supplemental income as a broke college kid. So I was, happy to have that internship experience. But yeah, the full-time job offer was in San Jose, California. Yeah, I mean, it just I liked it okay. I think the good thing is, life should be about trying new things, and then if you don't like it, you are able to make a more informed decision moving forward, and then you can pivot from there. So it's kind of ultimately what I ended up realizing was, I went out there for a year-long training program as an associate SE. And that first year out of college was kind of basically like grad school is what it felt like. Like you were in a classroom setting for 6 months.
Cool.
You had technical exams, you had presentations, you had customer sales role plays assessments, you had just all sorts of exams. You had to get route switch certifications in the IT industry, so like Cisco certifications. So you had kind
Cool.
of this just very, very structured training program. And yeah, it was pretty challenging, but a great opportunity. I mean, they give you just so much valuable training, and they kind of tell you like, hey, if you are able to tough it out and pass everything and get all your certifications and pass all these exams, then you're pretty much, you're guaranteed a 80% pay raise. But
Wow.
you just like, you have to make it through. Like if you didn't finish your certifications by the end of month 12, like you would get fired.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's it was challenging, but like just even doing all of like the sales trainings and learning just negotiation and just presentation skills and just getting that pretty much like beat out of you, where just standing up in front of a room and presenting on something just isn't scary anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, you learn like amazing soft skills for sure, in addition to all of the technical training. Um, but yeah, ultimately I kind of realized I just hated San Jose. So just figured out a path to transfer to a team in Houston.
Okay. So yeah, so you transferred to Houston, and then eventually you grew in this role. First of all, very cool that they have such a structured program, and I think that that's awesome that they were so structured from your internship process to having you already lined up with a return offer, then training you, and then developing you. But then obviously then you developed yourself, and you grew 6 years with Cisco, and then that culminated up into a role as an account manager because you were really good at your job. You're managing 34 accounts. You're responsible for revenue forecasting. You're doing interfacing between all your support groups. I mean, you did a lot of things in this account manager role. What was the switch that you made from sales engineering to then account management? What was that like for you?
Yeah, so that was, I think, kind of an interesting path. I remember during my internship, so when internship, you're kind of getting exposure to what life might be like once you're in outside sales, at Cisco, outside sales as an account manager and as a systems engineer or sales engineer. Those terms are used interchangeably in this industry, but account managers and sales engineers are essentially kind of partnered up, as kind of business partners, you could say. And you have the account manager that manages the strategic relationship with usually the C-level executives within a client account. And then you
Mhm.
have the engineer who is working really closely with the engineering teams and working on the design for all the IT infrastructure projects and any IT refresh projects, and you're working more on kind of that technical side. And I remember as an intern, I, worked with the account manager interns and was just kind of like, man, this just seems so much more fun. Or at least from my perspective, because, if you go back to just like my whole story of just not really loving engineering from the jump, but just choosing it because it was more logical. But I, saw anyone who's on this business sales side of just kind of like, okay, you're, having these more like big picture conversations and you're talking about, technology really directly correlating to, how can we cut costs, increase revenue? And, you talk about that as an engineer for sure. If you're a good sales engineer, you have to bring it back to the business case for a project. But on the account manager side, you're really more heavily focused on that business sales. And it really is about, hey, how can we build a strategic relationship with these C-level executives within the client? So I think that aspect of having more high level conversations about strategy and business and building these relationships was just a lot sexier to me than talking about a data center refresh. And oh, like let's talk about like, okay, we're going to add a disaster recovery site. How are we going to connect that back to the HQ network? And okay, we have to make sure it's secure. Let's talk about like which cybersecurity protocols we need to have in place, which products solve this fit. And it just kind of got to the point where I was like, I just really don't like getting in the weeds with the tech, and just didn't really find myself wanting to get more technical as well. And so I kind of realized early on that being an account manager was like the end goal for me. But I also saw it as like, okay, if I go through an engineering path in this tech sales world, almost no account managers have any sort of technical background. They might understand at a high level what this switch is versus this one, or how this router might fit into a customer's network compared to another, but they don't really know the technical aspects as much. So I also kind of saw it as like, okay, if I do want to be an account manager, having a technical background is going to make me a way more effective account manager, and I'm going to be able to sell things more effectively. I also will be able to gain way more credibility with C-level executives and my clients because I have an engineering background and they know that I know the tech. So I, really saw this path of engineering at Cisco as a way to benefit my kind of career in the long run if I was going to go down this account manager path. Um, so that really was to me like me meeting my ultimate goal within my career at Cisco. And it was great while it lasted. It
Ah,
was,
you
yeah,
enjoyed it.
yeah, I enjoyed it. I mean, just especially like I worked with public sector customers. So, you're not just selling IT products and services to another Fortune 500 company where this equipment's going in the office buildings and we're talking about how to connect users to the network and, how to secure their data. It was actually talking about how can we use Cisco's technology to actually make an impact on citizens' lives. So if I'm
Wow,
working
that's
with a
cool.
city government, or I had one customer that was a port, to dealing with the port authority, where it's kind of like, okay, how can we increase the number of transactions at the container terminals using Cisco technology? And then if we increase the number of transactions in and out of the terminal, that can directly correlate to more GDP for the state of Texas. So like actually having those strategic conversations and actually thinking about technology that can make an impact on people's lives. So I think this public sector world I was in of working with those customers, that was kind of the major selling point for me. And I worked with public sector customers the whole time I was at Cisco.
That's cool. Thank you for doing that, by the way. As a citizen of Texas, a former citizen of Texas, I appreciate you increasing her GDP and hopefully lowering the taxes that I had to pay as a resident.
Yeah, I don't know if I did that, but at least those are some conversations that were had. But you
Hey,
know, don't
hey,
give
I
me any
mean,
credit there. I think things could still be way better.
I'm not saying that I am the reason why Europe has more natural gas and are less reliant on the Russian government, but I'm not saying that I'm not part of the impact on that. I kind of did something related to that. I'm just saying, you're welcome, Europe. You're welcome.
Yeah, yeah, you're
Okay,
welcome, guys.
so Cisco, 6 years. You first job out of school, you culminated, you reached your goal, and then you quit your job and moved to Alaska.
Yeah, I did. I did,
Why?
Daniel. You know,
You
that's a tough one. I think
you
I
say you live
guess
your life
it's
in
just
extremes. That's quite the extreme right there.
yeah, yeah. I think the account manager role, I really did love it. I feel like it was by far the most challenging job I'd ever had, like my whole time at Cisco. I mean, you're just handling so many different moving parts. You're, not only trying to manage and build strategic relationships with your customers and with the C level in your accounts, but then you're also, internally managing, you have product specialists and sales specialists for every single aspect of Cisco's portfolio. And if you know anything about their portfolio, I mean, they have a huge portfolio. Like anything in the IT world, like Cisco sells it.
Wow.
Um, so you're managing, you know, tons of different sellers internally, and it's all about okay, like how can I kind of quarterback this deal where I'm going to leverage all of my resources and we're going to work together as a team and try to achieve this common goal. And that was awesome. And really just really being cognizant of like customer satisfaction, that's a big part of the job. And account manager money is like pretty great. Account managers can usually make like double what a sales engineer makes. So
Wow.
that to me was like a huge selling point. It's kind of earlier in my career was just really really focused on money.
I don't blame you.
But
I like money too.
yeah, but it's like then once you kind of realize like been, or at least for me, I realized like, okay, I'm going through the motions. Like all I do is just like work, 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 work to like get this goal. And I achieved it. And man, like I just was not happy. Like everyone kind of thinks like, okay, I'm going to set this goal. Maybe it takes me a couple years or several years to achieve it. And like when I get it, like, man, I'm going to be happy. It's going to solve all my problems. And I kind of realized like, man, my problems aren't solved. I'm like, I'm waking up every day. I'm like stressed as shit.
I
I've,
can
tons of
imagine.
gray hairs already. Like I'm just like, just waking up and just like sighing, just being like, oh, if I just make it through this week, like we're gonna be good. Like, it was a grind. Like I can't complain. Like you're compensated more than fairly for the amount of work and effort you put into a job like that. But
Yeah.
I also started kind of realizing like, okay, like all I thought I cared about was just like making a ton of money. And then you start to think about life philosophically. And I started getting into like Stoic philosophy. Then I started kind of realizing it's like I read this one quote from, I think it was from Seneca. And it was, poverty isn't having too little, it's wanting more. And
Mm,
I remember reading that and I was like, oh, like, man, like I feel like on paper, like, sure, I'm very, very financially secure, but man, like this having more money, like being financially secure, like this isn't bringing me joy. Like what am I doing here? There has to be more to life. I feel like I was just so drained. Like I'd wake up every day just like emotionally and just mentally drained. Um
yeah, that's exhausting.
and yeah, it was just exhausting. And then, I already was like very tired. And then I kind of faced a situation at Cisco where had a really big deal on the line. And I would say there's kind of a situation where I really needed my company to have my back about something, and I didn't feel like they had my back. And so then I kind of got to the point where I'm like, okay, like man, just from like a moral standpoint and a value standpoint, like I thought our values were aligned, but it doesn't seem like they are anymore. And at that point, it's kind of like, okay, well, like, what am I doing? Like, have I lost sight of who I am? It's kind of like I can't continue working a job just to make a ton of money if I feel like my values might be, uh, or I might have to kind of go against those or compromise, my values in any way. So that's kind of ultimately why I ended up deciding to leave, aside from being super burned out, but it was just like me not feeling supported and me feeling like I may have to do something I don't want to do
Right.
to close a deal. And that just, yeah, it was not something I was willing to do. And like an old kind of mentor told me, there's no softer pillow than a clean conscience. And that like just really just stuck with me forever. Yeah. So I ended up kind of being like, yeah, you're right. Like, I'm going to quit. Like, I just need a break. Like, this just the money wasn't worth it anymore. I was burned out. And then realizing like there's more to life than just working and making money. It's like, hey, you got to enjoy life too. Like life shouldn't be so serious all the time. Um, just because you're awake doesn't mean you're alive, Daniel.
Yeah, that is true. That is true. So you thankfully though you've been working so hard that you had a good nest egg and you said, "Screw it. I'm going to Alaska." And what'd you do in Alaska?
What didn't I do in Alaska, Daniel?
Uh-oh.
Um, yeah, no, I mean, like, so, I mean, I don't, can't remember. I feel like, so you were a couple years younger than me in college. So, we definitely talked like plenty of times. But I guess, at least for my friends who knew me well, like they knew I wasn't really the most outdoorsy in, in college. I think I was
Interesting. Okay.
people, yeah, like just liked nice things, especially when I
Hmm.
worked at Cisco. It's like more of my money was spent buying nice things and saving as opposed to like spending money on experiences or like doing anything cool or
Hmm.
outdoorsy. Um, so I kind of saw Alaska as this like really, really extreme option where I'm just like, man, like this would be cool. Like I'm not outdoorsy, I'm kind of bougie. Like I kind of should probably try to go do this. And then a lot of
Okay.
my friends laughed at me when I said I was going to Alaska. And so I was just like, what? Like, what do you mean? Like, you don't think I'll make it there? Just kind of making fun of me. They're just like, what are you going to do in Alaska? I'm like, what do you mean? What am I going to do? I'm going to be out in nature and shit. And
So you did that?
yeah, yeah. So the Alaska too, it kind of worked out perfectly. So I was catching up with a friend from high school, and she does seasonal work, and she was going to Alaska for a seasonal gig up there. And when I was
Okay.
quitting Cisco, and I was kind of like, man, I just need to like go somewhere extreme. And I was like Alaska or something. And then she was like, dude, I'm going to Alaska. Just like come with me. And I was like, why not? You know,
That's
like
insane. So what'd you do? Did you, I mean, there are seasonal jobs up there. Which one did you take?
yeah, so initially I like didn't want to work because I was just like so burned out from Cisco, and I just really wanted to just chill and kind of do nothing and just be fun employed, as they say, and maybe take a little sabbatical. But
Okay.
I also was just kind of like, okay, at the time too, it was during COVID still, or it was like the tail end of COVID. So in order to drive through Canada, to get there, you had to either have like a place of residence in
Hmm.
Alaska, or you had to have a job in order to pass through Canada. And so I wanted to do that drive from Texas. So I was kind of like, okay, I need to get a job. So I was like, okay, I'll just get a job there, and like whatever, I can quit. Um, so yeah,
Okay.
so yeah, I got an assistant manager job at the same hotel that my friend was working at, and yeah, I did it for 1 month and I quit.
Interesting. Did you like it?
Oh, absolutely not. Absolutely not. It was the worst experience of my life. But I think it goes back to this theme I always tell people. It's like, it's okay to just like do something that you're not 100% sure about, because at the end of the day, like, why wonder what if about anything? I think
Yeah,
life should be about trying to accumulate more experiences. And as a result of that, you're able to gain knowledge and then take action based on the knowledge that you learn from an experience. And so
it's
like my
true.
mindset was kind of like, okay, like, yeah, sure. Like I had this badass job at this big company, on paper was like successful. Um,
Hmm.
Even though, like I said, like emotionally I was not successful. I was very drained when I quit. But I was kind of like, okay, whatever, like might as well try like a good chill job at a hotel, seasonal work, like Alaska, sweet, let's do it. And yeah, I freaking hated it. I mean, every day is just people are, yeah, hospitality industry is just not for me. It's just like people are complaining about every little thing. Their freaking
Yeah.
pillows are too flat, their sheets are scratchy, and I'm just like, Jesus. Like, I don't, like, what do you mean? Like, just suck it up. You're in Alaska. Like, go outside and enjoy it. Or they'd, be like, oh, my room's so hot. Like, whatever. I'd be like, yeah, there's no AC. Like, what did you expect? You're in the last frontier. Like, come on.
Yeah. Yeah.
And people just, yeah, just like dealing with their freaking stupid, trivial complaints. And I just, yeah, after about a month, I just had it. I'm just like, I didn't get an engineering degree for this. It's just to get like talked down to every day by just
Yeah.
people who just, yeah, were just complaining about stupid things that I just didn't care about. I know it sounds so horrible, but like, it just wasn't for me. Yeah, I think I learned from that 1 month that hospitality, whew, bless the souls who choose to work in hospitality. I
Mhm.
respect them tremendously. And I feel for them because I know that they have to deal with a lot of horrible people.
Yeah,
Um,
they do.
but yeah, I just absolutely could not. I was like, F this. I'm moving into a 96 square foot shed with no running water. And I'm just going to do the Alaska thing and just try to spend as much free time as I can just doing outdoorsy stuff, like, oh, the great outdoors. Let's go see what that's about. And turns out I loved it.
That's cool. What else did you learn about yourself? Did you learn anything about what you valued as a whole
Yeah.
there?
Yeah. So I feel like anytime if I tell people about Alaska, I think they're always kind of asking like, so what did you like learn? You took all this time off, like what were your takeaways? And I think for me, I always try to tell people now it's like, okay, like you need to really, really try to spend as much time alone with your thoughts as you can. Try
Hmm.
to fit it into your schedule. You don't have to go take a 6 month sabbatical in Alaska and go live in a shed to do that. It's like just try to find moments of silence throughout your week or throughout your day to like really just be alone with your thoughts. And I was fortunate that I was taking time off work, so I had nothing but time with my thoughts to really think about like, what do I even like to do? Like, what makes me tick? How do I want to feel every day? What do I want my life to look like? How can I kind of redefine success? Because I'd always thought this idea of success was, getting a good job and making a shit ton of money. And I'm like, okay, well, I did that, and that definitely didn't leave me feeling successful. So
Yeah.
maybe there's got to be something more to it. Um, and this idea of really just thinking about how do you desire to feel every day, that was probably like the biggest takeaway for me, was just thinking about like, okay, I feel like my whole time at Cisco I just felt so trapped. I
Mm-hmm.
felt like I was trying to like shove myself into this box of becoming successful based on this very constrained idea of success, that I
Mm-hmm.
had to make good money and work really hard, and that's how I had to be successful. And it was just so draining trying to fit myself into that definition. Is so limited, and that just left me feeling so trapped. And so then I was kind of able to think about the fact that freedom is just so important to me, like my number one kind of core value, and something I really really strive for now in my life. um so I'd say, yeah, just the biggest takeaway is just learning way more about myself and what I like and how I want to feel every day, and using those things to uh using those things to just impact my decision making. So now it's like if I'm on the fence about something, I try to think about it as, okay, if I decide to do X, is this going to make me feel more free, or is this going to make me feel less free? And I have other kind of core values, or just any sort of kind of feelings that I want. But for me, it's like freedom is like number one. And so I kind of use that as just a reference point now, just for everything. So I think that was kind of like the biggest thing, the biggest takeaway for me from this nice little fun employment journey.
Yeah. So you did that for 6 months, and then you. And by the way, I'm jealous. I did 1 week in Alaska and for my honeymoon, and I absolutely loved it. So the fact that you got to do 6 months there is amazing. And we're going to talk about the things that you got to see while you were there later. But
Yes,
after 6 months, you moved back to Houston.
I
Sounds
did.
fun. Yeah, you see, went from like the most beautiful part of America to then
To
America's
the
armpit.
ugliest.
Yeah, to America's armpit in Houston, but that's where you're from. Yeah,
Yeah,
that
born and raised.
explains even more why you went to Alaska whenever you took your break. So why Houston, and what'd you do when you got back to Houston?
Yeah, so I initially just kind of went back to Houston because I knew like, okay, I can just go move in with my older brother who lived there. And most of my like my parents, my older sister, like they're all in Houston. So I kind of was like, okay, like I'm not sure what the next step is for me. Like I just kind of knew after the end of 6 months in Alaska, I just had this feeling like, okay, it's time to go. Like I got what I came for here. I feel uh, recovered from burnout. I feel like I kind of know more of what I want my life to look like. And so I kind of more just went back to Houston because it was home.
Nice.
But I also immediately was like, man, I need some goals to work towards again. Like having a break was great, but I'm really big on always having a goal to work towards. If you don't have a goal you're working towards, it's just kind of like, how do you know what direction you're moving in? And you kind of, just wander aimlessly through life if you don't know where you're going. And so that's how I kind of felt, was like coming back. I was like, okay, I'm just kind of aimlessly wandering. Like I gotta find something. Yeah. And I applied for just a ton of jobs, just in, not back at Cisco, but at different similar companies, different companies in the industry, where there's partner companies, or maybe smaller companies that are much smaller than Cisco, or kind of late stage startups. Anything that I could kind of use my previous experience being in tech sales. It was like customer success positions and things of that nature. And man, I just was not getting any bites. It's kind of a tough time in the economy last fall, and I mean, still is not great, but at least back then, a lot of companies were doing layoffs. They were doing hiring freezes. So yeah, that was kind of my experience. And then I also was thinking like, okay, I'm in Houston. Like, yeah, I lived here for 4 years before going to Alaska. Like there's got to be something else. Maybe I just need to like move to like Austin or something. Like, we've a ton of friends from Trinity who, a lot of people moved to Austin after college. So I already had plenty of close friends in Austin. So I kind of just figured like, okay, like I visited Austin all the time when I was living in Houston. So I just figured might as well just move there and look at startups. So that's kind of what I did, was just looking at startups, because I was just facing so much resistance with getting a job that was kind of more related to what I was doing at Cisco. And so kind of like, okay, maybe I just got to try something different. So, tried to see that resistance as just a sign for myself to just try to think outside the box and do something a little bit different.
Nice.
And so, yeah, I ended up getting a job at a startup as the interim COO. So that's the beauty of startups, is you can get a C-level position with absolutely no experience
Nice.
and a job that you have no business being in.
So that's what you did, I guess. What was the name of the company that you worked for, and
Yeah,
what'd you
so it's
do?
called Libra. Yeah, it's called Libra. The company was all about, ironically enough, trying to help people find balance. And so
No
it's all
way.
about, yeah. So that was kind of the main reason. I was like, oh man, like I've struggled with finding balance my whole life. Like, sweet, like I could work on something that's actually going to benefit me, because I've just lived in extremes my whole life. Like I gotta find a way to make this happen. So yeah, I mean, we were trying to build a social platform that was just designed to help people find balance in their lives, mentally, physically, and emotionally, or mind, body, soul, however you want to spin it.
Love it.
Yeah, and being an interim COO, like, yeah, like I don't really know what I was doing. I think it was just, yeah, you're at a startup, no one really knows what they're doing, but you're just doing a lot of things, wearing a lot of different hats. So, I mean, it was super fun, because you have this experience where, okay, it's complete opposite of a company like Cisco, where it's this
Yeah.
huge enterprise company that's just been around for decades, and, they operate a certain way, and it's just very rigid. But, then going to the complete opposite, where it's like, okay, like there's absolutely no structure. Like you just have to wear all the hats and have to figure it out. And you know that this is the goal you're working towards. We just got to do a whole bunch of everything and try to see what gets us closer to that goal. So it was a great experience, and I loved it. I just personally left after about 5 months. Yeah, I just did it till it didn't feel right anymore. There was no like major reason why I left, or like nothing like happened. It was just, I kind of woke up one day and just had this like very compelling gut feeling that I just was like not supposed to do it anymore. Um, so in classic Mikaela fashion, I was just like, oh, it doesn't feel right anymore. Just let's just quit and figure it out. So yeah, then I had like another month off work. So that was cool. I got another little like mini sabbatical, and I was like, oh, I get to be fun employed again, like so soon. But it was exciting. And yeah, I applied to a ton of jobs. And it was just so funny, because I had the complete opposite experience that I'd had, 6 months prior, when I was trying to apply for jobs and like literally couldn't get anything. It was like I was applying to jobs. I was calling friends I knew and asking them, like people in my network, being like, hey, like, you know, any companies that are hiring right now, like, let me know. And then I just feel like I was just getting like flooded with interview requests, and just randomly would have like old managers calling me being like, hey, I just moved to this other company. Like, do you want to come, you know, be a sales rep here? So it was just crazy. Like, had just tons of different um, opportunities. And I ended up deciding that, you know, okay, like I think, you know, I left this world of tech sales and IT sales and did all these other things for a bit. But, you know, like it was a good, stable industry to be in. You can make good money. Once, especially if you have like several years under your belt in that industry, like it's pretty hard to find a job not making six figures. Like it's almost impossible. So that's why I kind of saw it as like, okay, like sure, I can make like good money, but I don't want to be like so close to the customer where I have to like really manage the relationship, because those jobs are always going to be significantly more demanding. And so like I knew my goal was like, okay, I can't just do the same thing I did before and just make work my life. Like I really, really want to try to have a balanced lifestyle as much as I can. So I was like, okay, how can I use my Cisco background, do a job where I can leverage that background, but you know, not have as demanding of a job as I did at Cisco. So yeah, I was able to find that. So I got it where I work now. Is I work at SHI, and so they're a global reseller for a lot of major IT manufacturers in the world. So you know, huge reseller for Cisco, Microsoft, Dell, and so you know all of those, a lot of those major IT players, they're a reseller
Nice.
for them. But like I'm just specifically a Cisco infrastructure specialist for that company. So I, you know, support the account executives who are the ones building the relationships and managing relationships with the clients. And then I work with a bunch of other Cisco specialists for, you know, the services portfolio and for the software portfolio. And then I just cover essentially the hardware portfolio. Um, so yeah, I mean, I'm pretty fortunate. Like I love working for them. It's a pretty chill gig compared to Cisco. I feel like, you know, you're really able to achieve work-life balance in this role. And yeah, that was kind of the major selling point for me.
What was the, how'd you get into this role? Did you just apply, or did this come from one of your connections?
So this one actually was one that I just like applied for. So like I had interviewed with a couple different companies that just from other connections, and it
Yeah.
just like was fine, but like didn't really seem like the right fit. It also seemed like it was going to be like too much work. And so I kind of was like, okay, I don't want to spend my time working 24/7 again. And so this
I
was
don't
one I
blame
just
you.
looked on LinkedIn postings, and I was still living in Austin, and so I knew that this reseller was headquartered in Austin, or they had a huge office and presence in Austin. So I kind of was like, oh, yeah, sweet, like their office is like 5 minutes down the corner from my house, like might as well apply. And I, you know, had heard of like knew about SHI when I was at Cisco. Because they were a reseller and we had to sell to clients through resellers. So, you
Mhm.
know, you kind of, I was aware of a lot of different resellers in the space. And yeah, I just applied based on a LinkedIn posting. And luckily, they were like really trying to hire people quickly. So the timeline moved very fast, which usually doesn't happen. But yeah, I was able to interview, did a couple interviews, and then started working there in June. So just past 6 months.
Wow, that's great. And it
Yeah.
sounds like it's a good place for you to be, and you're enjoying it and you like the company. So that's very exciting. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel like my goal was just to get a job where I could leverage my background and make decent money, not have to kill myself working. Um, and so, you know, reach that goal. But now I feel like, okay, I'm in the process of drafting and revising new goals to work towards. So I feel like I'm in a good spot now.
It's exciting. Very cool. So you've gone on this this crazy journey. I mean, not crazy. I'm not calling you crazy, please. I'm not. I'm not. But you've gone on a really cool journey. I mean, you've gone on the grind. You've gone and taken a break, and then you've found the balance. You've gone from one end of the spectrum to the other end of the spectrum, and then you found your way perfectly in the middle, or so we think right now, right?
I
So
think.
what we talked about a bunch of different learnings and things that you've taken away. What if you could package this whole thing up into like one digestible little bite for somebody to take away from it? What is the most important thing that you've learned in your career journey about how you've gotten to where you are?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I can answer your question and just say one thing. I think I can say a couple of things.
I'm all ears. We have unlimited time.
Yeah, I think I'd say a couple of things. No, I've touched on this before, but I think, relationships really are everything. But I urge people to not hear that and think like, okay, like I need to build relationships with everyone just for the sake of building relationships. I
Mhm.
know I would see a lot of that, especially when I was early in career, where, you're getting advice from all these senior level executives and they're all like network, network, network. But I just hate this idea of like this forced networking of just like, oh, I'm just going to like grab coffee with like every single person that I come in contact with and try to network with them. It's like, that's not productive. Like in everyday life outside of work, we build relationships with people that we naturally are drawn to, or we naturally click with, or like have things in common with. So I always encourage people to think about their career network in the same way, where it's kind of like, okay, you're always going to find people that you naturally click with.
Mhm.
Build relationships with those people because it's organic, and those are people who maybe um, share the same values, or maybe they have something in their career that you really admire and you really want to try to emulate, and they can kind of help coach you to get there. So I just think relationships are everything, but try to focus on building organic relationships with mentors, peers, coaches, friends, that sort of thing. Um, because yeah, I mean, relationships really, really are everything. I think just the second when I knew I was quitting the startup, like I called a handful of friends and they all were just like putting me in contact with tons of people like immediately. Um, so I think that's a huge thing. Um, I also think like the second thing is, I talked about this when we were going over kind of my Alaska story, but just yeah, like spend time alone with your thoughts. Like that really is crucial. And listen to your gut feeling also. That's like I literally like live and die by my gut feeling if I'm unsure about something, or if I think it's time to quit, or if I just am gonna decide I'm moving somewhere crazy. It's just all based on like, okay, my gut is telling me to do this, like bam, just gotta act, don't put it off, like go do it. And then lastly, I'd say just like don't put so much pressure on yourself. I think we all put too much pressure on ourselves to try and achieve things, or to try to do whatever it is we want to do. And I think we have to remind ourselves that like life is also supposed to be enjoyable. Like we are supposed to live a great story. It's not supposed to be so serious all the time. um so yeah, I know that was like four things instead of one, but
It's okay.
those would be the biggest pieces of advice, or I guess things to think about that I would give to everyone.
Thank you so much. That I think that's a really good piece of advice. And one thing that I look at that and I say, especially like the follow my gut thing. I feel like you specifically really did a good job of like setting yourself up and putting yourself in a position where you can do those things. I mean, you busted your tail at the start of your career and you built up a nest egg that allowed you to take a sabbatical, and then you had that valuable experience on your resume that made you so valuable that you could quit a job because you knew that you could call around and you'd have another job within a month. And I think that's a testament to how high quality of a contributor to teams that you are, how much of an asset you are to the companies that you work for. And it's definitely shown through this talk that you definitely know your stuff. And I'm so grateful that you came on and shared your journey and shared your experience and everything that you've learned in your career. to date. I really appreciate it, Mikaela.
Yeah, of course. Thank you so much for having me on and just for giving me a chance to share my story. I've
Yeah,
enjoyed it.
I'm glad you have because I have enjoyed it as well. So before we go, I want to give you a chance to. We mentioned earlier that we were going to talk about this earlier. We were going to talk about bear pics, specifically, we were going to talk about pictures of large gay men. No, just kidding. That's a different type of bear. We were going to talk about bears that you ran into in Alaska. So as you can see,
Yes.
I am shrinking our little bodies, and now
Are
I'm
you
going
gonna
to
share
add.
some bear pics?
I am going to share some bear pics. Here we go. So what was your favorite thing about Alaska, and what hobby did you get to pick up while you
Oh,
were in
yeah.
Alaska?
My favorite thing was just realizing that I love bears. Like I just kind of randomly on a random day trip, like I was bored one day and was like, "Okay, what kind of like cool thing can I go do?" And I saw that like bear viewing was a thing. And yeah, like I went to Lake Clark National Park and was able to see lots of brown bears just doing their thing, doing bear stuff.
That is
Digging for
so
clams,
cool.
seeing mama bears teach their cubs how to dig for clams, and then kind of like had that experience. And then this year I was like, man, like how cool would it be to be able to actually take pictures, like good quality pictures and not just like shitty iPhone videos and pics. So yeah, that's kind of what I did this year is I just took that up as a hobby where I took a photography class in Austin, got some good camera gear, went back to Alaska this year, went to Lake Clark National Park again, then went to Katmai National Park and was able to just hang out with all the brown bears. And so I kind of realized that that's just a very very fun hobby for me.
That is so cool. Yeah, I'm sharing some of your pictures. And how can people see your lovely bear pictures? Should they look up the hashtag bear pics
Yeah, yeah, look
online?
up hashtag bear on Instagram and see what comes up.
Oh man, oh, this is fun. Well, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast. I really appreciate you sharing your time. I'm just gonna end with this level. I'm gonna leave this picture of this cute little bear up
Uh-huh.
on our screen. And Mikaela, again, thank you so much for sharing your story. And I think that there's a lot to be learned here for people that are aspiring to be engineers about your personal goals, your aspirations, and finding a career that works for you. I mean, there's a little bit of everything in here, and I'm so grateful that you came on and shared your story.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Wow, that was such a great interview. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Engineering Success Podcast. Make sure that you like, subscribe if you're watching on YouTube, and you share and give a 5-star review on your audio platform if you're listening on an audio platform. You commenting and sharing helps YouTube and all the platforms realize that this is a great podcast and other people should listen to it too. So I really appreciate you doing that. Anyways, I'll catch you in the next episode. We got one more episode for 2023, and we'll catch you there. Bye.
Chasing payments, still playing in the basement while I'm working on arrangements. They heard the kid in 50 countries, thank God that's amazing. But I'd rather thank Spotify, they put me on the station.